Welcome to another episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast. And in this episode, I have Heather with the 20 something project and Pennigan Productions with me. And the 20 something project is a blog that highlights New York City artists and talks about really how cool all these artists are and kind of shows you an alternate path on cool things you could do with your 20s. So, Heather, thank you for coming on the show.
You for having me.
So, what inspired you to start Pennigan Productions and the 20 something project?
The start came from me being an artist. I studied acting. I was always that theater kid that was like, I'm gonna be a star. I'm gonna be on Broadway. And then when I graduated and got my BFA and started living life, the business side of acting was like, oh, I don't like this. I hate this. And so uh, this idea of being this artist and this actor was very different to the reality of it. And I just wanted to create something. I wanted to be creative and work with cool people and collaborate. And so this idea really just came from my need to create and being surrounded by so many cool people doing things. And I just thought that this was the story that needed to be told. And I was really excited to access people and help communicate the cool things that were happening right now in the city with young people.
And why specifically help out artists as opposed to just anybody in their 20s doing something cool? That's something I found really interesting.
I think maybe because I feel like I felt connected to the artist, and maybe it's because that was what my peers were. All my peers were artists, and I think that it's a really big task to take on, like all the 20s doing really cool things because there's so many of them. So I felt like maybe it was a smaller venue and that I felt like I could access. And the idea of just talking to loads of people that were creating just excited me.
And how do you define an artist? Because I've had some people tell me, oh, you're doing a podcast, you're kind of an artist. And I've never thought of myself as an artistic person, but I can see there's like a balance there. How do you define an artist?
Yeah, I would say that you're an artist. It's weird. I've actually, doing the project, I've been on a fine line of having to kind of decide what's art and what's not, which seems really weird. So my like rule of thumb is like everything is. If you're creating something, then you are an artist. I think that using yourself and being creative in any sort of capacity is art. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can express yourself. Um, and honestly, to be perfectly honest, most artists are businessmen as well. It's like a constant theme that people are like, yeah, I'm creating stuff, I'm making paintings, but actually 70% of the time I'm trying to sell these paintings or I'm talking to gallery owners. So I think that like even art kind of coexists with other ideas and concepts and business. So I think that art, it's not just art. It's just it's it encompasses everything. But I think creativity is really important.
Before we get into the 20 something blog, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about Pennigan Productions and what Pennigan Productions does.
Yes. So the Pentagon production aspect is kind of the umbrella of the project. The project is very big, so it could live on its own, but when I created Pennigan Productions, it was before the 20 something project existed. And the idea behind it was just a collaborative production company that was all about people working together. And through that, I think that that is a lovely representation of what the 20 something project is. And because the 20 something project is a blog, we're working on a documentary where we do events. The Pennigan production kind of brings it all together into one entity. And if anything comes out of the 20 something project or different projects are created through it, then it can be under that whole umbrella that is the Pennigan Productions.
Very cool. So let's get into the 20 something blog a little bit more. And we talked a little bit earlier about what made you want to start it, but was there a certain time where you were talking with a friend and you decided, hey, your story is really cool? Or is it just a thought you had randomly that you started saying, I want to start interviewing these people?
Actually, thinking about that I'm surrounded, like some of my closest friends are 20 something and are artists. And I my initial thought was to do a documentary right away. That was like because I had the Pennigan Productions. I wanted to make films. That's what was interesting me. And so this idea of the documentary was out, and I was like, yes, I want this to be about 20 something artists, a film about 20 something artists. And then somebody came up to me and they're like, well, Heather, not to be funny, but you don't have that much experience with filmmaking, and you don't have that much access to equipment, and you're kind of taking on a big project, and it's a really good idea, and I don't think that you should jump into it so soon. I think that you should do baby steps. And I think through talking to somebody, and this guy who said this to me actually helped with the film later on, and he really like brought me back, and he was just like, why don't you split it up into just small videos at first? Why don't you just start very small? Blogs right now are huge. Why don't you break it up? And so the idea of doing something that was smaller, that I could do, I do by myself, um, came into play. And then that's when this idea of just doing a weekly feature of an artist came through. And then I didn't know, I had maybe 6 artists, and then after 6 weeks I didn't know what I was going to do. But it's so weird, after a few weeks people just started emailing me and connecting me with people, and it's like every time an artist came up, it was just like, oh, great, great, great. And we've just been consistently we're able to feature artists week after week, and it's just been amazing. I mean, now we've been doing it for almost a year, and I just counted, and we have a few filmed interviews coming up in the next week, but we're up to 51 artists that we've interviewed. So, and they're all different mediums, which is really interesting to see them next to each other. You've got performance artists, like um, people who have a puppet Shakespeare company. There's also writers, like one of your previous guests, Olive Persimmon. There's musicians and bands and visual artists and photographers and sculptures, and it's so amazing to see all of them together. And it's what's interesting about it is that it started from a place of unknown, and I've just kind of allowed it to happen. I haven't tried to hold on to it too much. I've of course have wants for it, but I kind of just ride the wave. I've ridden the wave. I've allowed it to kind of take me where it has come, and I'm still trying to allow that to happen.
There's so many things that I love that you just said there. One of them was baby steps, and I love this idea. I think so many people, when they want to start something, they want to just jump into something too big, and that's always a problem. And I'll say with myself, the first episode I did, I recorded an episode by myself for this podcast, and then I did one with a buddy. And then from there, it's like you get on this roll, and like you said, things kind of just start falling into place. I'd interview one person, they'd say, "Oh, you should interview my friend," and I think it's really inspirational to anybody listening that is looking to start something. One, just take a small step forward, and then two, know that things are going to kind of fall into place for you, assuming that you put yourself out there and you really try hard. So I love that. And then riding the wave too, because you're right. Like when I first started this podcast, I had an idea of where I wanted to take it. And then as time went on, people had their own ideas and would tell me, and I'm like, you know what? That's actually a better idea. So maybe I can kind of do both. And I think that's really cool. It's an old, what is it, Jackie? No, not Jackie Chan. I forget the guy's name. The old karate guy who's like be like water. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, no, I think that also what's really amazing is that the nature of the project is collaborative, and that one of the big themes within the project is collaboration and young people collaborating, and I've been swept up in that. So not only am I highlighting this story of young people working together, I'm a part of it. So it's like this weird, cool thing that's happening, this synergy that's happening with people that I think that even though it doesn't just happen in art, I think it's something that's very common within artistic communities, and I feel like I'm very much a part of a artistic community right now. And it's weird to say, I would never say that like I've started it, because I feel like I'm just a part of it. But when people say things like, you started this, it's really great, I can't believe you've done this, I'm like, no, no, no. It's like it began not with me, it began with you. It began, you guys started it. So it's just, I feel really honored that people have taken the time to be a part of the project, and that come to our meetups and come to our events and that want to be featured. And I think that the whole thing is just really just an awesome, awesome adventure.
What are some things that you've learned from interviewing all these different artists? Is there certain things you see that successful artists have in common?
Interviewing people, and I ask that question all the time, like, what's your biggest lesson? Um, so well done, good, good question. Um, I think something that I learn is that you're not alone. Um, I think there's moments when you're trying to do something that it there you can stand in your way, or frustrating things happen, or you get disappointed, and that's okay. It's a part of the ride. And honestly, like, you you would plateau if there wasn't struggle. And I think that the biggest thing that I learn is that every interview that I do, I'm reminded of something that I know in myself, because it's so relatable, and I totally understand the experiences, and what the artists are talking about. But I'm reminded of things that I'm like, oh yeah, trust yourself, or oh yeah, it's going to be okay, or oh yeah, you have to be persistent, or hard work is the key, or baby steps. And I think that it's just, I'm constantly being reminded. But I think that it's just the biggest thing that I've really, really learned and took from this is that you're not alone, and that there's always going to be somebody there that is relating with you, and that just be open to it, and allow people to touch you, and allow yourself to touch other people.
Yeah, I also like you talking about how there's gonna be like hardship, there's gonna be hard times, and there was another. This is Seth Godin, who's like an entrepreneur type guy, had this quote too. And I'm not gonna say it exactly because I'll butcher it, but it's basically like a marathon runner doesn't stop a marathon and say, "Oh, I got tired." No, it's like that's the point. It's like why do entrepreneur or artists say, "Well, oh, I stopped because it was hard." It's like no, that's kind of that's gonna happen going into it. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, there was another quote. I always quote this one because I think it's amazing, because sometimes I feel like this. Because when you're doing something, and I'm sure you can relate, we were talking about this prior to recording, is that idea of, like, you have your day job, you're trying to do a project, you're trying to pay the bills, which doesn't always connect with trying to do something that is like soul fulfilling. They don't always like uh, lay next to each other. So sometimes it just feels really overwhelming. And there's this quote that this woman said, who started a nonprofit in Africa, and she's very young. She's in her 20s, and it's been become very, very successful. And she's like, you know what? If they would have told me that it was going to be this hard, I would never have done this. So I have to remind myself sometimes when I feel really overwhelmed, or moments that I'm like, oh my God, I have not had a day off in months, and or I don't want to wake up at 6:30 to work on Twitter. I feel like, like, this is a part of it. You have to keep pushing through, and it's going to feel hard, and that's okay.
Absolutely. So when you're interviewing these artists, what are some of the questions that you ask? Like, what's your favorite questions that you ask? It sounds like I asked you one of them earlier.
I love that one. So this question wasn't in previous uh, interviews. And the way that I do set it up, I usually ask very similar questions to all the artists, because I think that it's really interesting to see the different answers. And even when they're similar, when you put them all together, if you were to watch a few different videos, you would look at it and be like, oh my God, these people seem so different, but they're like totally relating. And but one that came up in the documentary, when we were filming the documentary, which I think is one of our big themes in the film, was, why is art important? And I think that that question now I'm asking all the artists, because it's almost like, you're talking about struggle, you're talking about how hard it is, that there's loads of doubt, and there's easier things that you could be doing, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, why is art important? Why is it important to that you're doing this? Why, like, at the soul of what you're doing and you're creating, why is art important? And I love it, because I think sometimes artists really take it in and really think about it, and it's lovely to see not only um, them try to work out their answer, but the moment that they hear that question and they internalize it and they think about really why it's important, that they keep pursuing what they're pursuing.
And why is art important to you?
Oh, oh, so good. I think that art, you see,
See, it's tough. Yeah.
no, it's just like, I think that there's something that connects people, and it's not language, and it's something so much more than that, and it's like a human expression. And I think that sometimes it's really hard to express yourself. I think that people don't express themselves enough, and we're taught to hide ourselves, or hide our emotions, or um, live within a box. And I think that art, it's not about that. It's about true expression. It's about uh, letting yourself just open up and put it out there. And I think that just for us as a species, I think that it's so incredibly important. It's what's going to heal us. It's what's going to allow us to reflect on the horrible things that we've done and the wonderful things that we've done. And I think it's not enough to reflect with just an analytical type of mind. I think you have to be able to express in a way that is not without judgment, without just like throwing it out there in an impulsive manner. And I think that the art allows that opportunity.
I completely agree with what you're saying. And this is something that's been kind of hard for me because I'm a very left brain analytic type of thinker. And wrapping my head around what is art has been tough. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized a couple things. And one is, so my day-to-day life, I'm very like analytic, looking at numbers, what all that kind of stuff. But art's not about that. Art's not like, I mean, sure, there's some symmetry, there's some science to it, which is really interesting to me. But at the same time, you can look at a piece of art and get overstruck with like some emotion. you can see something and just have a sense of awe or beauty, and you can get an inside look into that person's mind, which is kind of insane when you think about it. It's you can look at this painting or this sculpture or whatever and have an emotion transmitted into you, even though this painter painted this 1,000 years ago or whatever. And there's something so deep to it that is beyond an analytic like capacity that I find really interesting.
It's like the idea, like when you get goosebumps,
Yeah.
like all, it's like there's you can only get you're not going to get that looking at a spreadsheet unless you really love spreadsheets.
I
Totally.
got some awesome spreadsheets.
If you have like completed a spreadsheet or like designed a spreadsheet, that's awesome. But like looking at a budget is probably not going to give you just an out of body experience. But going to an insane opera, or even just listening to a song on the radio that you love to dance to, or going to see in a museum to see a painting that is so famous, or from thousands of years ago, like pottery that was drawn on from like a culture that is long gone. It's just, I think that there's something that you just have to have. That you have to have the yin and the yang. So it's good that there's spreadsheets out there, and but you want to have like the tingling sensations of just loveliness.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Now, on the blog itself, what have been some of your favorite interviews, some of your favorite stories?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. um I I don't know. It's hard to say favorites. I'm like a massive podcast geek, and like I love NPR and anything that's storytelling, like documentary films, and I love people just like talking about their experiences. So I feel like in any interview, I feel like I can sit and like watch them. Well, I have, through editing them, watch them for hours and hours and hours and hours. So I feel like, though, I just feel like all of them I love. But some of my favorite stories, I would say, um, oh my gosh, I'm having to go through. Uh, I can't. It's like picking your favorite child. You can't
Let me
do it.
let me rephrase the question then. If for the average audience member, if they were to come to your site, and what one would you say this is a great starting point? This will really show you or really hook you in. Like this is one of the better ones.
I would say, I would say this is actually okay. So this is how I'll say it. I will say watch the recent ones, because my editing has gotten a lot better. It's been a learning process. My camera equipment has gotten a lot better, and they're shorter. Before, I like could not cut them down for the life of me. So some of the interviews are like 10 minutes. And who has 10 minutes to watch something? I understand that's like quite intense to watch a video online. So even though those are amazing, I would say if you're going to start, I would say start with the most recent. The most recent artist is actually Eric Frisch. He is a musician who is awesome, singer-songwriter. He's originally from Toronto, and he is really funny. He's very likable, very affable human being, and he's very positive as well. It was hard because I was like, so where's the struggle? But he was just like, yeah, it's hard, but I just like it. And so I'm like, okay, great. And he plays a little song on one of the videos, which is always really nice. So start there. Start at the end and go backwards. And what's nice on the site, because in the blog it's you have to scroll through it, but on the website we have a featured artist page, and so you can just look at a whole page of all the pictures of the artists, and you can just start clicking on people that you find attractive, or it says what their art is if you like comedians. You know what? Also, there is a one that I think I love her so much. She's going to be in the film, and it's just a really great story. Her name is Roz, and she is a professional pole dancer, and she had a corporate job and started doing pole dancing for fitness reasons, and has, like, they told her she had to stop or take her pictures off Facebook or something, and so she ended up leaving it, and now she does a full figured pole dance competition in the city every year, and she's so awesome. And so check Roz out because she's really awesome. And Olive Persimmon, her book is coming out in a month, or very, very soon, maybe this
Two
month.
weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot it's February.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So Olive is a good one. She has a lot of things happening. Christina Hutchinson, she is in the documentary. She has a podcast called Guys We Fuck, which is awesome. They're doing really well. It's an anti-slut shaming podcast, so they talk about sex and being body positive and being sex positive, and that comes out once a week. So hers is awesome. I guess we should do a boy. There is a rap duo called Young Planet. These two guys are awesome. They're going to be coming out with an album. They live together and they just like produce some really, really awesome stuff. And then I guess I'll put one more out there just for fun. Oh, Jesse Johnson was one of a recent ones. He's a musician. He was on Broadway. He was in Wicked, and has decided to start doing something a little more creative. And he does pop music now. He just did an EP, and him and two other lovely artists are opening up a space in Brooklyn that's going to be an event studio, coffee shop, bar type, community based art space, and called the Powwow. So that's a good one to check out. I'm sorry, I just rambled. I just gave you like loads. Should I just list the 50 artists? I don't know.
That was no, that was perfect because I loved watching as you thought of more artists, and I'll put a link to all those in the show notes too.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, just link it to the featured artist page because I mean, people, maybe somebody wants a visual artist, maybe somebody wants a comedian, maybe somebody wants some sort of musician. So definitely check it out. And we also, just to do a little plug, we're starting a newsletter this week. It's actually going to be coming out in 2 days. And that's really great because it will give you a update on the artists that were featured the month before, and also if you are in the New York City area, you'll be able to see what the artists who are involved in the project, what they're up to, their events coming up, and we have loads of stuff happening all the time. The artists are always out performing or exhibiting. There's all types of events. So if you're somebody who likes to meet cool people and do exciting, interesting things, it's a really great way to be involved.
so the documentary, what's the timeline for that?
So the documentary was filmed in the fall, and we're editing right now. I think I want to say May or June. Um, it's I like in my mind thought March, February, March, but obviously things just don't always happen like that. So we're hoping that it's May or June. We're going to have a big party to celebrate it. So if you're in the New York City area, it's another reason to subscribe or follow us. You can get involved. And our plan is it's going to be a shorter documentary, no more than 45 minutes. And we really want to take it to the festivals, but also try to sell it to some networks and whatnot, and see if we can try to create a mini documentary series. We think that there's so many different artists, and it was really hard to capture uh, everybody and everything that we wanted to capture with such a small budget and such a kind of small crew. So we have decided that it's better to just do something that is small and lovely and that represents what we're about, and then try to give it to somebody who could maybe develop it more. And I think that it's really set up to be more of a mini documentary series in the way that we have just so many different cool artists doing amazing things that why wouldn't you want to feature 20 something artists in New York City?
Will there be artists on the documentary that aren't on the blog, or is it basically going to be the videos from the blog?
No, it's we refilmed the interviews. So they're different interviews, different, and it's kind of a different. They talk about different aspects of the being the artist, and but it is the artist from the blog. And because we shot it in the fall, there's some of the earlier artists. So the artists past October are not in the documentary, but we have shots of events, and we do monthly meetups with the artists where we allow people to come together. There's been some really amazing collaborations, people meeting each other through these meetups and through our events, which we are all about that. So there's shots in the documentary of all the artists coming together. So, yeah.
How do people sign up for the newsletter? They just go to the 20 something project?
Yeah, you just go to the Penniganproductions.com is our website. You can find the 20 something project blog there. We're also on Tumblr. They're the same thing, but we have the blog on the website and on Tumblr. And yeah, you just sign up. There's a little box that says email subscription, and we promise it will be like once a month newsletter, so nothing too crazy. If there's events, we may harass you a little bit more, but it won't happen all the time.
It'll be for your own good, right?
Exactly. And so, yes, and then also we're on Twitter. We have 20 something Proj, not project, Proj, Proj, and also Pennigan Films on Twitter. We have 2 Twitter accounts, and Instagram, we're Pennigan Productions, and Facebook, Pennigan Productions. So you can find information about all the artists and the events and things like that through there too, if you don't want to commit to the email subscription.
Before we wrap things up, any last advice you'd have for the 20 somethings out there, whether they're artists or not artists?
I think what you're doing is really great. I think that what's really important is, and we spoke about this a little bit before, is that life is not what you think it is going to be, and that you should live the life that you want to live. And if you're not hurting anybody, then I think that you should do something that you love, because you live once, and it's amazing what you can do and the happiness you can find by doing something that is not inside a box or inside the box. And I think that when you're in your 20s, you have that time to explore. And so explore, push yourself past a point of being comfortable, try to find what your passion is, be true to yourself, but also, you know, find things and ways to use yourself to push yourself past your boundaries. And, you know, there's time to think and stress about the future, but, you know, nobody ever got something great by being safe. So aim for as high as you can, and then some, because honestly, you don't know how much or how long you're going to be here for. So you might as well live every day without regrets.
Very well said. I completely agree with all that. Well, thank you, Heather, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Lovely. It was really nice meeting you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it, subscribe, like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.